Buffalo in the playoffs.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Puckin Leafs Podcast. I'm Joe Cioffs. I'm here with the boys, Coach Frank and Bobby Bottles. Thank God October is over. If you're a Leafs fan, you are saying that right now. October has not been a friendly month for this team the past couple of years, and this year definitely included. The team is not playing well. So far, their record is 4-4-2 in their first 10 games, and which is not terrible. But when you consider that 6 of those games were against teams that didn't even qualify for the playoffs last year, and a few of those teams are significantly terrible teams like the Ducks and the Coyotes, who are actively trying to lose, then you think it's a lot worse than it actually is. And Leafs Nation, as it is right now, is losing their collective minds all over the radio station. Around the city, people are talking about it. People are talking about it on Twitter. They're losing their minds. So let's talk about it. We're going to try to calm ourselves, make this a little bit therapeutic, because I know myself, I was losing my mind yesterday in that Ducks game. But talk about maybe why there could be some positives, and talk about why maybe an extreme shakeup might need to happen for this roster. So let's discuss quickly the road trip. It wasn't a successful one. It started off well against the Jets, and then after that, they have been winless in 4. Not a great game against Vegas. They were not good against the Sharks. Not great against LA. And then the Ducks, they had a pretty decent first period, but then the last 2 periods weren't good. It was almost like when the Leafs took the 3-1 lead, and then the Marner giveaway on the second goal, as soon as the Ducks scored that second goal, you just automatically knew they were going to lose that game, because you have seen this movie before. You know the ending. Frankie, help me out here. You knew that the Leafs were going to lose that game at that point, did you not?
I think we were all texting at the same time saying the Leafs are going to lose this game. We knew. We just knew. It's a shame.
There were a bunch of Leafy things that happened in that game, and we'll get to that in a sec, but I just don't understand why the goal happens. It's 3-2. Keefe calls the timeout. I actually really liked that idea to call the timeout there. But then they're on their heels for the next 5-6 minutes. And then, of course, the tying goal happens in a goal that Källgren should have had. But I'm not blaming him, because you shouldn't need to require your third-string goalie to come up with big saves and save your bacon against the worst team in the league. You shouldn't need to happen. But here we are, and that's exactly what happened. And then they almost lose in regulation. Thank God for a controversial call by the video review. I guess it was a great call by the Leafs to have it reviewed. I am actually one of the few people who actually did think it was goalie interference. I didn't think it was going to get called back. But they were rather fortunate, I would say, to have that call back and to get a point.
Can I say to you that the goalie interference, this is off the record, the goalie interference rule is not a rule anymore. It's an opinion.
Of course it is.
There is no clear. Take your shot, man. And you know what? I would actually give credit to Keefe for making that call, because he knows that Anaheim's got the worst power play in the league. So it's like, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen, right? So, hey, give it a shot. It worked out. Actually got them a point.
It's true.
As sad as that is.
All right.
Where do we start, man? I don't know.
Can we talk about the benching of Mitch Marner yesterday?
Please.
I loved it, because finally you're holding some of the most prominent players on this team accountable for their actions. Marner hasn't been good enough the first 10 games. We know that. He's not been up to Marner level. But to give the first giveaway, bad pass, okay, accept it, move on. The second giveaway, when you have a 3-1 lead, why make that pass? Why fool around with it at the blue line like that instead of just get it deep? He knows better than that. It cost them the 3-2 goal, and now they're on their heels. You bench him, fine. It's the right move. But then the Ducks tie it 3-3, and you put him back on the ice. It's like, oh, now it's tied, so now we need you to go out and score for us. What is with the mixed messaging that is going on here? bench the guy, keep him benched, and this way you're proving a point. But like you've said, Frankie, I think we're starting to realize who rules the roost. I don't even know if that's a proper saying, but who runs the show on that team? It's those two guys. It's Matthews and Marner. They do whatever they want. And I'm trying to think of other teams if that happens with other squads. Like, I'm pretty sure McDavid and Draisaitl run their team. But is it to this level? Crosby runs the Penguins.
You know,
I'm at a loss for words.
I'm trying to think back if I've heard of examples of, or thinking of examples where, you know, a coach comes out and says something and comes back and retracts it. You know, like for me, that was the first real sign of struggle and real sign of, I think I could be wrong here, but it seems like there's some animosity with Keefe and Marner. And I think when Keefe said what he wanted to say, which again was not a personal shot, was not an attack, he was just a coach giving his opinion that his players, his best players weren't his best players, and comes back the next day with a bullshit excuse of what he meant when everybody knew exactly what it meant. And here we are again, putting gas on the fire, thinking that Marner's agent or somebody, maybe his dad, called Dubas up and said, you can't say that about my guys. And this is where the problems lie. And going back to last game, Joe, to answer your question, why did Marner do what he did and then get right back out on the ice 2 shifts later? He does that because he can. And what I mean by that is there's no accountability. You can't have accountability for your bottom 6 guys or your 5th, 6th defenseman and not have that across the board.
But that's what I'm saying. You prove your point by benching him for a couple shifts. He doesn't play for a couple minutes, and then as soon as you get scored on, he's back on the ice.
Philip Kral gave that giveaway. We were talking about it. You're saying, you know, why is he on the ice in the last 30 seconds? You know why? Because my whole thing was he was actually playing well, and they wanted to see what the kid had. They didn't want to put Hall back out there. They didn't want to put Riley out there because he was a gong show as well. So let's put the kid out. He makes one spinorama move with confidence, granted. Then he trips over his own feet and then goes back on a breakaway. I bet you he's not even going to be playing next game. I'll even put money on that because he went back to back. But still, I don't think he saw more than the shift in the third period.
I don't think so.
So you're doing that to a rookie playing his second game, but a guy who led to 2 goals gets sat for 1 shift, knows the camera's on him, takes one of his $300 sticks and breaks it in the dressing room to come back. We all know that was all Hollywood. Must have been a California theme. But we all knew he did that to get noticed. You know what I mean? Like, who goes in the back and breaks a stick? Like, give me a friggin' break here, man. You know, last thing I'll say on this. Leaf fans give a lot of shit to Willie Nylander all over the last few years. He's dogging it. He doesn't go in the corners. He's soft, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever heard that guy complain about anything or say anything in the media? He doesn't care, man. People handle adversity different ways. John Tavares never seems like things bother him because he handles it a certain way. Austin Matthews seems to shrug things off. Nylander seems to shrug things off. No, we always got this one guy whose image acts like a total complete baby, and we got to put up with this shit. And the worst part about it is, Joe, even if you decide to trade this guy, you lose the deal. You know why? Because he's the best goddamn player in the trade, and they're going to get probably for 40 cents on the dollar. So they're really in a lose-lose situation. So how do they get out of it, man? I'm sure we'll figure that out, but that's just kind of my rant on that.
That's why they got to make it work with them. They have no choice.
No choice.
Bob, you want to tune in here? You want to chime in?
I was going to save all my comments for the good, the bad, and I have a really nice leafy for you guys.
Let's get into that then. Let's go with the good, because I really struggle to find anything good from this road trip. You got any?
The good.
I have one.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Bob.
It's over. I mean, that's the good. That's the good. Is the trip's done?
You know
And
what? Their power play was okay. They did. I think they scored a power play goal in each game, which again, that was kind of their bread and butter last year. And sure enough, again, Joe trying to outscore their problems seems to be the MO of this team. So from that standpoint, the power play was okay. I really can't even say, this line was good because there wasn't really a line.
I'd say the power play was okay, Frank, but this is the good, the bad, and the leafy. That's not the okay, the bad, and the leafy.
I know, but you're saying we're reaching here, but
I know we are reaching. I like though. The road trip's over. That's the good part. Thank God.
The good. You know what? Let's go back to what you said. We finally saw some accountability in guys sitting. That's good. I'll take that as a good.
Fair enough. The bad was tough because there was so much of it that I didn't know what to choose.
Let me get my list out.
For me, the bad was the penalty kill. This was one of the best penalty kills in the league last year, and they just been terrible. The penalty kill pretty much cost them the game against San Jose, and then it cost them the game against LA. It has not been nearly as good enough. And yes, they got a shorty against the Ducks. They seem to be way more dangerous shorthanded last year than they are this year. But
you know why?
I'll take less shorthanded goals. Just kill off the penalties. Yes, I know it's not the same personnel. They miss Mikheyev, yes, for sure.
Big time. That speed off the rush and the threat of, a shorthanded chance. It's a big loss on the PK. I'll give him that. On the PK it was. But no, I agree. I think they're 15th or 16th last time I checked. So right in the middle of pack for PK, which you want to be a little bit better, but
not good enough.
No, not good enough.
Especially on this trip. What do you got for the bad?
Oh man, there's so many.
You got to give me one though.
I think I'm gonna go with the bad. Let's go with.
I'll even let you give two if you really can't choose between them.
No, I know. I'm just trying to think of the games. It's got to be that they're not playing with, they're not playing for each other, man. They're going out there with no purpose. They're going out there with no rallying point. The lineup has been a total revolving door. Of guys, and I get he's trying to see the right fit, but again, the one constant they haven't moved is Marner's and Matthews. So if you're gonna put it in a blender, man, put it in a goddamn blender and do it. How do you touch every line but those two guys? It's just it
makes no sense.
It boggles my. Well, it goes back to your first point of who's running that team, but if you're gonna move every single guy, which you have. There's only two guys you haven't moved. And you know what, Joe? Maybe, just maybe, that's the answer to the problem. Yep. They even moved Nylander into center before they moved Marner and Matthews. Nylander was the third line center against Anaheim, which actually looked okay with Malgin and Robertson. But
yeah. Well, I didn't mind the move because their bottom six has been an offensive black hole, basically. And it gave them, they actually scored a 5-on-5 goal with that line. So it worked out, I would say. But yeah, why not split Matthews and Marner? Matthews can play well with Nylander. Marner does well with Tavares. You can go back to Matthews Marner later on in the season when you feel like it. But right now, it ain't working.
Doesn't want to ruffle the feathers, man.
It's ridiculous. It should
By the way, my other option was Justin Hall, but we've been down that road already. That's why I didn't go that road. That's why I was thinking. I'm not every episode. We can't talk about that, man. We can't.
Bobby, what do you got for the bad?
Nick Robertson. And not that Nick Robertson has been bad, but what did he do to Sheldon Keefe that this guy's not getting a shot? So, you guys talked about how great he was in training camp and then he doesn't make the team. Okay, salary cap issues. He played 8 minutes and 2 seconds yesterday. Here's a Pierre Engvall stat line. Strap in for this, boys. 14 minutes and 10 seconds, zero goals, 0 assists, 0 plus minus, 0 penalty minutes, 0 block shots, 1 shot on net. How does this guy get 14 minutes? I mean, if Philip Brawl, okay, he's a defenseman, I get it, so they're going to play more. 8 minutes and 7 seconds, so more than Nick Robertson. 0, minus 1, 2 penalty minutes, 1 block. Here's Nick Robertson, 8 minutes of time. 1 assist, plus 1, 2 shots on goal, 1 blocked. He went out there with 6 minutes left or 5 minutes left, had a great shift. Him and I believe he was out there with Nylander. I mean, they generated. He was buzzing, got the puck, didn't see the ice again for the last, whatever it was, 9 minutes, including overtime. I don't understand why this guy's not playing more. And I'm biased because I have him on my fantasy team. I thought he was going to be like the breakout player of the season of the year.
Sure looked like it after that first game, right?
I mean, it's just like the kid, and like he's got energy. He's playing with fire. He's in his home. I believe he's from California. 8 minutes of action. I don't understand why this guy's not getting a bigger role. Give him a shot, and if it doesn't work, you can say, well, we tried. But it's like, I don't know, Pierre Engvall gets 6 more minutes, and Pierre Engvall is going to do nothing with it. Nothing.
Pierre Engvall. I actually wouldn't mind seeing him on the top line, to be honest with you, Robertson. Why not?
Said that last week.
That's actually pretty good, Bobby. And by the way, he has probably one of the most, if not the most lethal shot next to Matthews on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And would you not want him in a position to get that thing off as much as possible?
Yep.
So.
Indeed. All right. How about now for the Leafy, which, when we made this segment, I'm like, there might not be a Leafy thing every week. That might be tough to do. But at this rate, it's hard to choose which Leafy thing you want to pick for this list. So why don't you go ahead, Bobby? Go ahead. Give us yours.
I like to go because I don't know about you guys, but I almost spit my food out as I was watching the game. So, we have our chat and Frankie was finally going crazy. They finally benched Marner. Beautiful. And then, of course, like he misses 1 shift. I mean, like the worst benching of all time. So he's out there in overtime. And, of course, who gets the chance to win the game but the guy that shouldn't have been out there? And he gets robbed. And 2 seconds later, the puck's in the back of their net. And, I mean, he shouldn't have even been out there. And he gets out there. He has a chance to win the game and totally redeem himself. And then he does the whiff.
Did I not call it? Did I not say he was going to score the winner?
You know what? When I saw it, I'm like, oh, my God, Frankie was right. And then, no, he was not right. In fact, you were completely wrong. He lost them the game because 2 seconds later, Zegras gets the puck, and Anaheim gets one chance.
Face off, but yeah.
Yes, and bang, it's in the back of their net. So,
all right, Frankie, give us yours. That was a good one.
Okay, same play. In Minor Adam, we teach our boys that on a face-off, if there's nobody on the hash mark, you go on the other side where there's a body. Match up a body for each guy. In what universe is Alex Kerfoot line up on the weak side of that face-off in the Anaheim zone? And sure enough, who scores the winning goal? His guy that should have been on the other side. And where does Kerfoot find himself? Right behind Trevor Zegras, chasing him back down the ice. If Kerfoot was in the right position, that goal shouldn't have happened. Sure enough, Alex Kerfoot is my Leafy of the week.
Frank, I've been on the bench so many times in that situation with 9-year-olds, and I'm like, how did he not figure it out? And then you're like, oh, wait, a 28-year-old? How old is Kerfoot?
Yeah,
something like that.
He can't even figure out to line up in the right spot. It's like
now, I also could have went with Alex Kerfoot celebrating what he thought was a goal.
Stole my thunder.
But I'll leave that to Joe.
It seems like when Kerfoot has these games, he just messes up a whole bunch of times. Like Game 6, that was the against Tampa. That was the Alex Kerfoot game. I've had enough of this guy. I don't know. I've said it the last couple of games. I don't know how much longer do we have to be subjected to Alex Kerfoot. he's not even that bad a player. He's a good third line player. He could move up and down the lineup. I just don't want him on this team anymore. There's a scene in Varsity Blues when the coach, remember the hard ass coach in Varsity Blues, goes up to Dawson's Creek guy in the show. His name's Jonathan Moxon. And he says, "Damn it, Moxon, you are the dumbest smart kid I know." Alex Kerfoot is the dumbest smart kid I know. He went to Harvard, okay? He's obviously very smart. But he just doesn't do very smart things on the ice, I feel like. The puck squeaks through the goalie's pads, and he's got his hands up in the air. Meanwhile, if he just has a stick on the ice, it's an easy tap-in. And then the puck goes the other way, and it's in the back of their own net. There's Leafy for you right there.
Now, we all could have had an Alex Kerfoot Leafy moment this week between the face-off, between the celebratory call, and choosing a power play over a penalty shot. Because this guy can't. This guy couldn't
score on a breakaway if his life depended on it.
This guy could hit water if he fell out of a boat, man.
I think the NHL should implement the rule. If you get a penalty shot, you get to choose whether you want the power play or the penalty shot.
Yes.
Because we definitely take the power play in that instance.
Agreed. Can I just say something? Just to tie off this Kerfoot thing and Hall. Objectively, and this is how I see things now. I look at this roster up and down, and whether you're a pessimist Leaf fan or an optimistic Leaf fan, you look at this roster, and there is nothing that they've done in the offseason to this roster which makes you feel confident that they can win a round or two. And then I look deeper at this roster, and I said to myself, if I key in on certain guys like Kerfoot and Hall and Engvall and like most of that bottom six, I look at Boston, I look at Colorado, I look at all the top end teams, and I say to myself, where would they be on those teams? And I'll tell you where the answer is, and it's not great. It's either fourth line or scratch. Now, Kerfoot might be the exception where he can play in the third line, but on how many teams is Kerfoot playing your top six? That's the scary thing. And the thing with this team is the same thing I've been saying since for a long time on with this identity piece, is because of the cap, they put players in positions to fail. They're asking more from guys who will not or are not typically suited for those roles. Alex Kerfoot is not a top six forward, and you can't expect that from him moving forward if you want to succeed. Justin Hall is not a top four defenseman. He is a 6 or 7 on good playoff teams. And we're asking these guys to be what? There's the answer to a lot of your problems. Guys are not slotted properly, but they got no choice now. That's what they have. So unless you got guys in the Marlies that are ready to go, which you probably don't, this is it, guys. This is it. And that's what my issue has been with guys like Kerfoot. So I try to give the guy a break, but he's just not suited. He's not slotted in the right spot, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, you can't have Hall playing 20 minutes a night.
Oh, man. No.
Have you guys been disappointed with, I thought he was an untradeable 2 years ago. Rasmus Sandin hasn't really impressed me very much. I don't know if he's coming along.
Oh, I mean, he missed part of training, most of the training.
I'm the opposite. I think he's made some great outlet. I've been okay with it.
I hear the sentiment that he hasn't been good. I don't understand that. Like, I don't think he's been great, but I don't think he's been terrible.
No.
I think he'll only get better. I think when Liljegren gets back, I think that'll help them out. Hopefully that pushes Hall down the lineup or out of the lineup, because I think he could benefit from a few games in the press box just to cool his head and to calm down a little bit, because I'm sure he's human, man. He's feeling the heat that the whole fan base is on him. He knows when he's making mistakes, when the puck feels like a grenade on his stick. So, yeah.
Is he feeling the heat, Joe? Is he feeling it? Feel?
Bonus. I got somebody who got that that reference.
FYI, Timothy Liljegren has been added to the LTIR piece of section of the Leafs roster. So I don't think he's re-injured himself. I think that's just a retroactive, but I think he's good to go, and I think the earliest he can come back is November 5th, 4th or 5th. So okay. He's right around the horizon.
Good to know.
I have one more question. So we were talking about a Marner deal, and Frank, you're right. Any deal you make with him, you're probably going to lose the deal because he's the best player in the deal. However, we saw a Tkachuk Huberdeau deal that was a very, very big deal in the offseason. I have a two-parter. A, do you kind of not regret going after one of those two guys had they would maybe wanted Marner? And B, is there possibly something there for them to make that move? They're not going to. This is more of like we're living in a little fantasy world. But is there maybe a Marner for X that maybe is out there somewhere?
That's a great question. You asked me that on the spot. I nothing really jumps out at me for Marner per se. They probably have to be a couple pieces, or a team not being able to sign like a guy on an RFA, or coming off an entry level that has superstar ability. That's where you say, Rob, like, are we rebuilding, or are we going to try to do this on the fly and try to bring in pieces we need? Like, that's the type of teams, you'd be looking at. So, man, anything come to mind, Joel? I can't really think of. I would look at a team who, like LA, for example. I would look at a team like LA who Rob Blake says he's all in because he knows he was in the window that the Leafs were in 3 years ago, having a lot of budding stars on entry-level deals or about to go into a bridge deal, has a lot of cap space, and probably could part with some like long-term assets. I wouldn't say I'm just throwing like a Quentin Byfield or who else you got there? Like a Velarde or something like that. Like, those are the type of guys you probably look at, young, cheap guys that you have control of, but they're probably going to command, $4 or $5 million in a couple of years. That would be probably the type of trade I would look at. But a 1-for-1 or like a one, like, I don't think that exists, especially not with the cap. Is there
like
something
a star for star?
Yeah, is there something that jumps out? Because I think the Huberdeau Tkachuk thing kind of came out of nowhere. So who knows? Maybe there is somebody out there that
I don't see it. I think we're living in a fantasy world. I don't think so.
Oh,
even that trade was like, you don't see deals like that happen when was the last time before this year that you saw a deal like that happen? Where it was like star player for star player. It doesn't happen.
How would you have felt had Florida or Calgary gone to the Leafs and said, we'll do Marner 1-for-1 for either Tkachuk or Huberdeau? Would you guys have done either of those deals?
Tkachuk, yes.
For Tkachuk, but not Huberdeau.
Not Huberdeau.
Interesting.
Same player.
Huberdeau and Weegar?
Oh, that's right. They got, maybe they don't want to get, maybe they just 1-for-1. Let's say no Weegar, 1-for-1.
But that was the deal.
But that's because they like Tkachuk. They really like Tkachuk.
You're probably looking at a team like Minnesota, who knows they have a lot of cap issues coming up with the cap penalty they have on was it Parise and Suter, I think it was. Kaprizov for Marner or something like that. You look at, like, is that what we're talking?
I don't think they're.
I don't know if they're going to discuss this. It's not happening.
No, I'm just saying, but that's the type of deal you probably look at. Other than that,
Minnesota's not making that deal. Kaprizov is
no. Hey, why? They're on the same caliber. No, don't look at now. Don't look at recency. I'm looking. Come on, I'm not saying David for Marner. No, I'm trying to look at
What about a team on the west coast of Canada that has a lot of good superstars and nothing working in Vancouver? Hey, maybe a little 1-for-1.
There's nothing there that if you're saying Elias Peterson for.
Oh.
What about what about like Quinn Hughes and something for him?
The only thing I would take from Vancouver exactly is Quinn Hughes. But then again, we already got one. We got how many more offensive defensemen do you need on this team? But that's another thing, Joe. Are you going to trade Mitch Marner for a second pair rough defenseman? And you're not trading those guys for spare parts, right? You're trading for something you don't have. You're trading for a Matt Tkachuk. You're trading for a Brady Tkachuk. Dare I say it, you might be even trading for a guy like Tom Wilson if you're going to move Marner, because you're going to be looking for a guy like Marner in 2-3 years anyways. So unless you got him in the pipeline, you're not trading him.
No.
And you lose the deal.
Yep. So what's wrong with this team right now? Other than the fact that their two best players, Marner and Matthews, have not been their best players. And this team is configured, it's built so that their top players play like top end players in the league. And when they're not playing like that, then the team struggles.
What's wrong?
I think the bottom six is, Frankie, you were right, man. They're struggling to score. As much as we could talk about the defense hasn't been great, but you still look at their numbers defensively, they're not terrible. You look at goals against, they're not terrible. They're in the middle point of the league. They're bottom of the league in offense right now. They're bottom of the league in 5-on-5 scoring, which you would have said was crazy. And I think that what has been the problem with this team in the playoffs? When the top guys don't score, there's been no other depth scoring. They lost Spezza, they lost Kasha, they lost Mikheyev. Who's replacing that offense that they brought in?
Pierre Engvall.
Maybe Nick Robertson, but they wouldn't even play him that much. And it's like, I'm at the point now where they're trying to mix up and see if there's a fit. You've given these guys 10 games now. The bottom six guys. You've given them 10 games. I think it's time to start giving guys like Steves and Holmberg a try in that bottom six and see if they can make a difference, because right now they look great on the Marlies and they had really good preseasons. The only reason they didn't make the team was because they were they didn't have to clear waivers and they were able to get sent down to the Marlies. I'm at that point.
I'm going back. I was gonna say we have a poll on our Twitter asking, what could be the first move made, whether it's a firing, whether it's a trade, a depth trade, what have you. And I'm saying to myself, I'm looking at this poll, and I'm saying the most realistic thing is you got to do it in-house. So if there's something from the Marlies you can bring up, at least to give it a different look. I'm not saying it's going to be an earth-shattering move, but you got some guys down there that can at least push Engvall, Simmons. Then again, I think Simmons stays in the lineup, but Engvall, Malgin, maybe not Kemp because I think you need him for the penalty kill. Aston Reese, Obey Kubel. These guys here are just guys. So give me cheaper options that I know have a chip on their shoulder that want to play. Alex Steves there's no reason why he shouldn't be on this team. Pontus Holmberg, who I told you, Joe, should have been on this team right from the start of training camp. He had a good camp, but because of the numbers, he was sent down. Him and Steves have been fantastic.
That's what I'm saying.
Why hasn't Joey Anderson got a decent look on this team? So all I'm saying is you bring a couple of these guys up. You now have guys looking over their shoulder. I don't want to get put on waivers.
Looking over their shoulder right now because they've stunk for the first.
But Joe, guys saying Obey Kubel, Reese, these Malgin, their money comes off the cap. They don't want to play in the AHL. If they get put on waivers and they don't get selected, down to the Marlies. That should be enough.
I agree. And say what you want about Malgin. He's got 2 5-on-5 goals. He's second on the team in 5-on-5 goals. You know who the first is? David Kempf is first on the team in 5-on-5 goals. That's a big freaking problem, man. I know that. He's he's the bottom six player that you don't move.
Isn't there just like a lack of self-awareness? Like we talked about this too, and we it's like beating a dead horse. Like, there was last year with Marner talking about how him and Matthews have to be better in the playoffs when it's like, A, you're not Austin Matthews, and B, Austin Matthews was good. Like he's been good in the playoffs. There's just like a lack of self-awareness where like they have to know that the fan base is so frustrated with them. Like if I was a Leaf fan, I'd be so frustrated to know that, hey, like let's kind of tighten up the skates here and sharpen up, and just to lay eggs like they are. Like, don't you think these should be like max effort games? Like
it's not even that they're outplaying teams and like getting totally unlucky. They're getting outplayed in a lot of these games. Like they were outplayed by the Ducks in the second and third period yesterday. They were outplayed by the Kings. They were outplayed for a significant portion of the Sharks game. They were outplayed by Vegas for the whole game. That rarely happened last season.
They've really struggled in second periods this year. I find that second period's been really, I don't know why, but that's just one of those weird things, man.
So Frankie, they struggle to start games. They rarely score. They struggle in the second period. They can't hold leads in the third period. What the hell are they good at?
That warm-up looks pretty good, though.
Frustrating the fan base. Do you think they're just like, you think Keith is just a lame duck? They're just kind of trying to get him kind of canned?
And here's the thing. So a lot of
Him and the GM are lame ducks.
a lot of radio stations are saying, like, do you think a coaching change is on the horizon? I don't think Kyle Dubas is firing Sheldon Keefe. I think they're attached at the hip. They're either both going or they're both staying. Number one. Number two, although I don't agree with a lot of some of the things that Keefe has done, why are we going to fire another coach for these guys? Like, why? Why? You got rid of the hard ass because the players didn't like him. Now you got to get rid of the players coach because the players can't play with this guy either. It's on the players. They got to pick it up and play better. It's not on the coach.
Joe, you can't fire 20 players.
Doesn't matter.
It does. It's sad. It's very sad, but I mean, you can't. They know that they have the organization. And I think at some point you got to say maybe they're just trying to get this guy fired. Maybe they're just trying to get rid of Keefe.
I don't believe that players.
I think he's a good. I think he's a good coach. To be honest with you.
Then this really comes back to lack of self-awareness of, hey, our coach is on the hot seat. We're on the hot seat. Let's play hard. At what point do the players have to go out and play? But maybe it's just a complete. I think this team's out of touch. I think they don't get it.
So we're gonna learn a lot more than you think in the next 4 games, considering they have Philadelphia, who is up to a pretty good start, and they play that game that Bobby is so adamant about, that the Leafs don't match up against hardworking teams that are less skilled than them. So they got Philadelphia, they got Vegas, they got Boston, they got Carolina back-to-back. If the Leafs come out,
this is after Boston, Carolina, though.
Sorry,
it's.
Oh yeah, whatever the order is. I'm just talking about the teams. What I'm saying is, now they have a tougher schedule, but now they have to look at teams where it's like, well, shit, these guys aren't bottom feeders. They don't want to get embarrassed. So I don't want to read too much into the lines here, but they knew going into that Winnipeg game that was going to be a war. They dressed Clifford. They dressed Simmons. They played a different style of game. They knew what happened the last time they played with Winnipeg and the whole victory thing and all that, and they came out with the win. They were a motivated team, if I could say, for that one game at least. Is there any motivation here against these next few teams, knowing that they're going to be playing at home against Philadelphia, against Boston, who are not really, I would say rivals with Philadelphia, but just, that whole history there. Is there something there where they can flip the switch against teams like this? Is it better they're playing Eastern Conference rivals than bottom feeders on the West Coast in Anaheim? That's gonna at least, maybe, I want to see how that changes. I can tell you one thing: if Wayne Simmons is not in that lineup, it's gonna get ugly. And if we're saying that, what does that tell you?
You want to talk about getting ugly? If they play against Boston like they just played on the West Coast, they're going to get their butts handed to them. It's going to be one of those brutal, disgusting games that were after the second period, the game's over already. Oh. And then they got Carolina on the second half of the back-to-back. So that'll be great.
You guys are bettors. What are the odds that a jersey or a waffle or any other household item is thrown on the ice if this thing goes south? Because I can definitely see that happening. Some goof thinks he's going to be trying to get on Sports Center and throw a jersey on the ice. And I bet you if it is, it's a Marner jersey.
If they lose against Philly on Wednesday and they're losing in an embarrassing fashion on Saturday against Boston, I put those odds higher than 50%.
It's coming.
Anyways, so yeah, we got last time we spoke, I asked you how many points you think they're coming out with on the West Coast. You said 3. I said, wow, that's low. They actually came out with 2. How many points do you think they're coming out with this next 3-game set against Philly, Boston, Carolina on the back-to-back?
I'll go 4.
Wow. I think if I could sign off for 4 right now, I'd take it in a heartbeat. I'm going 3. They win 1, they lose 1 in overtime, and then they lose 1 handedly.
Handedly.
Oh, man. It makes for great content when they're bad, though.
It is. I'm telling you, it's just we're sitting here. It just has one of those feels that one more loss. I wouldn't even say that one more bad loss. It's like eerily quiet, and when things are eerily quiet, things happen when you don't expect. And I just, it's just one of those days where you could be doing something and then bang, you get it right on that Twitter feed. This happens, a firing or a trade. It has that feel to it, So we'll see.
We'll see. Maybe Wednesday we live stream or do like a post game Insta session.
We'll see. Right? We can. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, I will be on Raw Mike Richards on Wednesday morning at 8:40 on Saga 960. And there's a good chance that conversation gets nuclear. So we're just going to continue this because Mike always comes with the hard questions. So check it out.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Hopefully the Leafs put you in a better mood than we were tonight when we recorded this. If you could smash that like button, that subscribe button, we really, truly appreciate it. And we love all the comments as well. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great night.